stress isn't all bad. There's this concept of hormesis, which is we need a little bit of stress to grow. As human beings, as individuals, I mentioned failure, I mentioned not succeeding. It's okay to have a little bit of stress. In fact, I encourage everyone to have a little bit. We should always be a little bit at the edge of our seats, right? Yet, if stress goes unchecked and we stay on too intensely and for too long, that's where there's a true shift in our hormonal pathways, in our adrenal pathways. I've studied this in my clinic. You can go into what we call adrenal fatigue or hypothalamic pituitary adrenal disconnect. And that mention of disconnect, we disconnect with ourselves, our purpose, and our being. Stress overtakes us, health starts to become impaired. That's where disease sets in.
What simple daily rituals or practices can instantly help reduce stress-related anxiety or burnout?
Step one, just taking a moment to
Mm-hmm.
pause and reflect.
Mm-hmm.
Pausing and reflecting throughout the day. And that doesn't need to be anything more than it is. It doesn't need to be sitting and journaling and meditating. That's beautiful if one can add that. Just taking a break, stepping away from the computer. If the weather is such, even if the weather is snowing in Chicago, it's beautiful outside, putting your coat on, going for a quick walk, just disconnecting, number one, from yourself and technology, reconnecting with nature, reconnect with your breath.
Trupti, for leaders and entrepreneurs who constantly are under pressure, right? How can they manage high performance without high stress? So, folks, you have tuned into TGV and hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series, the world's only quadrilingual podcast at this moment of recording. And we are trying to embark into multiple languages as we speak. And here we embark on transformative conversations for a better future. And we want to simplify and amplify your journey to success. I'm your host, Navin Samala, dedicated to making the world a better place by bringing you wisdom through valuable discussions with experts designed to simplify and amplify your success. And thank you so much for tuning in. So, folks, welcome back to the Guiding Voice podcast series. And today we are joined by Dr. Trupti Gokani. And she's an award-winning neurologist, author of The Mind-Body Stress Reset and also The Stress RX, a neurologist's prescription for happiness and health. She's a regular on the Dr. Oz show and other major platforms, and she combines Western neurology with Eastern Ayurvedic wisdom to help people heal the root causes of stress-related illness. And through her clinical work and speaking engagements, Dr. Trupti empowers individuals to reclaim balance, clarity, and emotional well-being in an overstressed world. So, Trupti, hearty welcome to TGV, the Guiding Voice podcast series. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. Doing so well. Thank you.
All right. So, first things first, you have a lot of wisdom and you have already published 2 books related to stress. So, what can the audience expect from our conversation today and why should they tune into our episode?
So for years and years, we've discussed stress, and yet so many of us do not understand how stress impacts not only our mental, but our physical state. We're on a crisis, healthcare crisis in the world, not just in the US, all over the world. We're spending more and more on healthcare and not getting the outcomes. So if we can unlock the secrets to stress and truly delve into this ancient wisdom and apply it to modern day, I think we can all overcome so many health challenges. So today we're going to really dive deep into how to unlock stress, understand ourselves, and overcome health issues that we're all struggling with.
Wonderful. So, folks, today we are going to delve into our conversation on the topic at hand. We are spending trillions on stress, but are we healing the right way? But before we get started with the conversation, here is an exciting twist as always. Let us tickle our guest's brain first. So, Trupti, get ready for a rapid fire round of random words. I'll mention a few and I would love to hear the first thing that comes to your mind in response without thinking much. And if you're ready, let's get started.
I'm ready.
Okay, my first word is curiosity.
Ooh, that ability to move beyond your routine place of comfort, moving into a space either with thoughts or actions that take you out of your comfort zone.
Wow. Invention.
Creating, developing something that allows others to perform at a better space and a better level.
Future.
Ooh, being in a state where we're thinking about moving towards, moving into another space outside of our current state.
Universe.
Mm. To me, that's divine guidance, the divine being that's supporting us all.
Leadership.
Empowering others to be their best selves.
Mhm. Success.
Finding your unique journey and being purposeful in the
Mhm.
development of that.
Stress.
Disconnect with self.
Life.
The experience of being a spiritual source within a human body and navigating the outcome of our purpose.
Aliens.
Mm. Beings that have messages outside of ourselves that, quite frankly, may give us inspiration to be better and to be wiser than the state that we know.
Mm, Interesting. And it comes the last word, role model.
Someone who allows you to be inspired, focused, driven, and live into your optimal self.
Mhm. Amazing. I loved all the responses. Very unique thought process. And thank you so much for participating in rapid fire round number one. There is one more rapid fire round toward the end of the episode. So stay tuned.
Was
And Trupti, thank you once again for being part of our journey in shaping the careers and lives of millions across the globe. And let's get into the mainstream conversation. So, talk to us about who is your guiding voice.
Wow. So the guiding voice, it took me many, many years to understand how that even shows in our lives. And for me, the guiding voice is connecting with, as we mentioned, universe, that divine source that may not always be a pleasant voice, may sometimes be a challenging voice, may sometimes give us some opportunities or some um, interesting journeys that and paths we need to take. Yet that divine voice is that voice of the Supreme that is guiding us. And the key thing with that voice, though, is we need to be connected with ourselves in a state that's balanced to hear the voice.
Mhm.
So there's two parts to the voice. It's there, yet we often don't hear it if we're not in alignment with ourselves. That's where stress gets in the way.
Amazing. Now, talk to us about your success mantra, as in top three things that have contributed to your success so far.
Whew. Number one, trust your gut. Always trust your intuition. Lead with that. Do not lead with your thinking brain, lead with the feeling, lead with your gut. Number two, stop worrying what others think. Just do what is right. Always follow your truth because that's the truth that's worth following. And the third thing is, allow yourself to fail. There's no such thing as failure.
Mm.
Failure is just feedback. It's okay. And I'm going to say fail fast. Do it quickly because you'll learn from that and you'll get better and you may fail again. Yet you'll redirect yourself. And each time you fail, you don't fall as hard and you grow and you learn. If you don't fail, you're not living your life. So that's me.
That's amazing. I think yeah, it is essential to fail fast and either pivot or persevere. Amazing. And let's start talking about the stress. So we often hear stress kills, but you say stress untreated is what truly harms us. So, can you explain the neurological link between chronic stress and physical illness?
Yeah, so I've been studying stress for almost 3 decades now, and a lot of it was based on my own early story of not understanding how stress impacted me. And I was in my first year of medical school, and I was struggling, and quite frankly, I was incredibly stressed out. Yet I saw a therapist, and she asked me if I was stressed, and I said no, because I did not know what stress looked like. And now, over the years, as I've taken care of patients and coaching clients and myself and my family, I've realized, wow, stress shows up in a very unique way. And stress isn't all bad. There's this concept of hormesis, which is we need a little bit of stress to grow. As human beings, as individuals, I mentioned failure, I mentioned not succeeding. It's okay to have a little bit of stress. In fact, I encourage everyone to have a little bit. We should always be a little bit at the edge of our seats, right? Yet, if stress goes unchecked and we stay on too intensely and for too long, that's where there's a true shift in our hormonal pathways, in our adrenal pathways. I've studied this in my clinic. You can go into what we call adrenal fatigue or hypothalamic pituitary adrenal disconnect. And that mention of disconnect, we disconnect with ourselves, our purpose, and our being. Stress overtakes us, health starts to become impaired. That's where disease sets in.
Yeah, got it. And you have said the modern world treats symptoms, not the sources. So, what does root cause healing look like in real life?
Yeah, and this was something, again, I think I was my first patient. And truly speaking, when I was struggling, I I'm Indian of origin, yet I was born in Kampala, Uganda, and I was actually smuggled out of the country in 1971 and brought over to Chicago, grew up in a very Western life, and became very Western in my being and didn't appreciate or understand Eastern medicine, Ayurveda, ancient science, because I was very much programmed to believe the Western way was the best way to practice, right? My dad is a physician, a very Western doctor, and all I knew was Western medicine. So as I moved into medical school and started struggling with my own challenges of sleep issues, I didn't even know Eastern medicine existed. I didn't know about root cause healing. I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest with you. Yet,
Hmm.
as I followed the Western protocols, which were, what's the Western protocol? You're having sleep issues, try a medication to help you fall asleep. And I started with the natural things like melatonin and magnesium and tried to change my bedtime routine a little bit, soften the lighting, change my bed pillows, still wasn't sleeping. And I thought, well, this is tricky. And I'd never really struggled before with anything, to be frank with you. So this is my first year of medical school. I was struggling with sleep. And I thought, well, what do I do next? Saw the therapist. And I remember she asked me if I was stressed. And I said no. So I said, okay, I'm not stressed. I don't even know what is going on with me. My dad did my exam and checked my labs. Everything was normal. So he told me, you're fine. I said, but I can't sleep. So then I started to explore the self-help section of the bookstores. And for the listeners that are the young listeners out there, we didn't have internet. We didn't have social media. All we had were the bookstores, right? And the books.
Yeah.
So I went to the self-help section and I would, in between my anatomy, histology, my studying for my medical classes, I went into the self-help section and started pulling books. I started books by, Andrew Weil, Spontaneous Healing, Bernie Siegel, Love, Medicine, and Miracles, Deepak Chopra, Perfect Health. I was reading all these books, and they were fascinating, far more interesting than my anatomy, histology books. And I started learning about this idea of the emotions and how our energetic body, whoa, gets imbalanced before the physical gets imbalanced. Now, again, I didn't even know that there was an energetic side of us. I thought only
Mhm.
physical. Physical exam, my labs are fine, thus I'm fine, right? That's the physical. Yet the root cause to me is understanding the subtle, understanding the energy, understanding how energetically we shift first. And we have a lot of warning signals before we physically shift. And my goal right now, in my mid 50s now, after 30 years of doing this, is trying to teach individuals to focus on energy, the subtle body, not just the physical
Hmm.
body. Often that's too late when you're focusing on physical. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And why do you believe that Western medicine and Eastern wisdom must merge to truly heal the stress?
Because to understand stress, which I'll define it a little bit more, and the rapid fire gave the
Yeah.
concept of disconnect. Because when I read that book, I think back to that me in my early 20s, lost, struggling, didn't know what to do, opening these books, and what was it that spoke to me as a very Western-minded person, you know? What spoke to me was the connection with self. Suddenly, there was a piece of literature and a source that was my early mentor, Those books were my mentors,
Hmm.
saying to me, "Hey, Trupti, stop focusing on fixing all of these things by using the pills and changing your environment. Why don't you look within? Why don't you take a moment and understand what you have done to allow yourself to create problems sleeping? What is the internal environment? Don't try to fix the external." And that was actually the first time I really thought that way. I never really thought in that way before. And because I kept thinking, I'm young, I'm healthy, I don't understand why I'm having sleep issues. I started blaming everything around me. It's my classes, it's my professor, it's this, it's my that. It's the coffee I'm drinking. Honestly, yeah, shifting into, tea drinking and taking away the coffee, helpful. Yet there was so much more to the story to unpack. And a lot of it was taking some time to go internal. And that's what I believe ancient medicine gives us that Western doesn't. Yet, I will tell you, after running an East meets West clinic for 20 years, I realized if you can put both of those things together, you can pause with somebody. And I did a lot of work in the migraine space. And if you can say, hey, I know you're getting a lot of migraines. And by the way, this is the first time in history we are actually now, in migraine and headaches, those aged than less 50, the number one disability, we call it the years lived with disability, the number one cause is headaches, with migraine being right there at the top. So I think being in front of technology, being in front of the computers, not connecting with individuals like we used to, is actually triggering, and the lights and all this extra stimulation is triggering more excitable brain activity and headaches and anxiety and all these things. So as I started to kind of understand this, I said, okay, if a migraine patient comes in, struggling with some migraines, has picked up and now asking me for my medications, saying, hey, Dr. Gokani, you know what? Can I double the dose of that medication? Or instead of giving me 9 tablets a month, can you give me 18? Common, very common to get that kind of question. At that moment, I'd say, let me ask you something. Why do you think you're getting the headaches? What's the message of the universe? And let's just pause and connect. And very often, the answer just came. It was so amazing to me. It wasn't this long, deep conversation. It was, I really hate my job. Or, I am so frustrated with my kids right now. Or, my mother in law is making me a little crazy. Or something. Something was clearly creating a disturbance in their being. And that wasn't being addressed. So then I suddenly became this, coach slash therapist in my office because we didn't have a lot of time. A lot of patients didn't want to go see a therapist. So I'd start to kind of coach them a little bit. And eventually got certified as a coach. But I started to eventually kind of find ways to get them to unravel and gave them books to read. Because that was my answer, right? So I'd say, why don't you read this book? Why don't you go
Hmm.
read Louise Hay? Why don't you check out this beautiful thing by Eckhart Tolle. And I'd have them go read. And they'd come back and say, "Oh, now I understand maybe why I am conflicted with my boss or why I have a conflict with my mother-in-law. Maybe it's me. Maybe I can work on this." Oh, how empowering is that, right? And then migraines started to get better without me prescribing more medications. That's the win-win, isn't it?
Yeah, got it, got it. And I think you've spent over 3 decades in this particular space, right? So, in your research, what is the biggest myth people believe about stress?
Whew. The biggest myth is that it is too overwhelming and challenging to improve. that I can't change it. The world is stressful. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm stressed because life is stressful. And that's it. And they give up. And that is the actual complete myth. That is not at all the way to look at stress. And I try to reframe that as much as I can and help empower people to know that just because the stress is out there, if you shift this inside, that will shift dramatically.
Yeah, got it. And what are the neurological markers that show someone is stuck in a stress loop, and how can they break free?
Beautiful question. Beautiful question, because I believe this is actually the direction we should go as
Mm-hmm.
providers, physicians, healthcare providers. Start to look at that, right? Start to look at it. And not only with labs, I mentioned labs. I'll start with the labs and we'll go further. Starting with labs, one of the easiest things to look at is your cholesterol. Cholesterol, which has been vilified by the pharma companies. I mean, how many individuals are on cholesterol medications? What I'm going to encourage everyone, and of course, don't stop your medications because I'm discussing this here on this podcast. Of course, check with your doctor first before changing or adjusting any medications. What I will say though is if you understand the pathway of cholesterol, I wrote about this in my first book, The Mysterious Mind, because it was so dramatic to me how many individuals are coming in with very, very low cholesterol levels, total cholesterol levels. And we're struggling with brain fog issues, struggling with hormonal issues. And I said, there's got to be a connection. And I looked at the pathway, and I was studying functional medicine out at that
Mm-hmm.
time. That being curious got me to go explore some different things. I'd taken my board exams, finished neurology training, the written boards, the oral boards. After that, you're kind of done, right? Most people are done. But no, I was curious. I kept going to conferences, learned about food intolerance testing, learned about, hormone pathways. And I learned from this incredible, I still remember her name, Dr. Janet Lang. She was an incredible provider. She taught about the precursor to all the hormones in your body is cholesterol. And she
Mm-hmm.
said,
Mm-hmm.
you need cholesterol. It's not a bad thing. Now, this is completely novel to hear in this is the early 2000s. We're talking, 25 years ago. That cholesterol wasn't so bad. Now, mind you, the commercials on TV were all take a cholesterol medication. Here's Lipitor. Here's this. Here's that. And I thought, wait a second. You don't want to lower your cholesterol, but aren't you going to increase your risk of heart disease if cholesterol is high? Well, if you look at that marker and follow it over the course of your life, you will see it can go up and down. It's an acute phase reactant. Your liver can produce cholesterol. It's not just coming from your diet. If you're stressed, cholesterol converts to pregnenolone. Pregnenolone can move into one of two pathways. The anti-aging pathway, which is DHEA, testosterone, estrogens, or aging, which is progesterone and cortisol. If I'm always stressed and disconnected, I'm going to move that cholesterol into pregnenolone, move it down to progesterone. Men and women do this, and then move it down to cortisol. If you move into cortisol too often, if you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly moving your cholesterol to cortisol, you are going to, in the beginning, make more cholesterol. And then eventually, you just can't keep up with production. Your
Mm-hmm.
cholesterol drops. Well, then how about if you're high and I add a statin medication? That's going to drop out your hormones. So this is a very complex pathway that you don't want to just stop and imbalance without paying attention to that. So one thing to look at labs is your cholesterol levels. Other thing to look at is your hemoglobin A1C. That's your 3-month window of your blood sugars. Why is that important? Well, again, we talk about diet. I'm really a big proponent of eating healthy foods, decreasing, sugar, high sugar diets, reducing processing in your foods, going with more proteins, good fats. Yet I'll tell you, your hemoglobin A1C is your marker of your 3 months of blood sugars, your kind of your balance of blood sugars over the course of 3 months. And if your HbA1c is high, the general recommendation is decrease sugars in your diet. Well, stress, unfortunately, when you break down glycogen to make blood sugar, and then your mind is stressed out, you're going to release sugars in a very similar way when you're stressed as you are to when you're eating a high sugar diet. So your hemoglobin A1C may be a marker of stress, not just your
Mm-hmm.
diet. So these are two big ones to look at. Cholesterol, your hemoglobin A1C, and then of course your blood sugar, fasting blood sugar. And those
Mm-hmm.
I'd start with those three and paying attention. And then there's some beautiful other ways to look at stress. And I'm wearing one of these things now, these rings, these beautiful devices we have. You can look at your HRV, your heart rate variability, and that gives your beat to beat rhythm. And if your HRV is unfortunately very low and it could show a stressed pattern versus a very variable heart rhythm because you're
Hmm.
breathing, you're relaxed, you have this real, that's also a marker. Nice to do HRV testing in my clinic. Lots of ways we can pick up on it if we're paying attention.
Hmm. Yeah, I think these are some things which I'm coming across for the first time, and that talks about the depth of research that you have done in this area. And
Mhm.
Trupti, what simple daily rituals or practices can instantly help reduce stress related anxiety or burnout?
Step one, just taking a moment to
Hmm.
pause and reflect,
Hmm.
pausing and reflecting throughout the day. And that doesn't need to be anything more than it is. It doesn't need to be sitting and journaling and meditating. That's beautiful if one can add that. Just taking a break, stepping away from the computer. If the weather is such, even if the weather is snowing in Chicago, it's beautiful outside, putting your coat on, going for a quick walk, just disconnecting, number one, from yourself and technology,
Hmm.
reconnecting with nature, reconnect with your breath. Doesn't require a lot. And if I can encourage individuals to do that once or twice during the day and then add to that, then add to in the morning, are we able to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes doing something you enjoy? It could be journaling, it could be reading a spiritual text, it could be doing a few stretches, it could be a little bit of breath work, whatever it is you enjoy. Just 5 or 10 minutes. And if that's added in, then we can do more. We can maybe start a nighttime ritual. And I believe in creating a circadian rhythm because if we ignore the day and night pattern, Ayurveda, Eastern medicine is all about reconnecting with the sun and the moon, right? It's circadian medicine,
Yeah.
is what it is. It's about chronobiology. It's about waking up with the sun, going to bed when the sun sets, not staying up till 2 in the morning watching Netflix, right? It's resetting and giving yourself the opportunity to heal. Sleep is so now that I've gone through experiences where I haven't had it. I am so grateful and thankful every night I sleep well. And I say that out loud. I'm so grateful and thankful I had a good night's sleep because sleep is healing. Getting into deep sleep is healing. Getting to bed by 10 p.m. is healing. So, starting with some simple practices of disconnecting, getting into your breath, just being in your mind, and then starting to evaluate what were the challenges for the day?
Okay. So moving to the next question, Trupti, like how does our gut health connect with the stress and emotional balance?
Yes. This was something early on in my training. As a neurologist, we didn't study a lot about gut brain connection, you know? And it was only after my dear daughter started getting headaches at age 5 that I decided to start to study that. After I'd finished my board exams, I mentioned, and kind of started practicing. And I was running a headache, helping run a headache clinic at that time, and getting calls from the school nurse. Your daughter is here with a headache. And I thought, oh goodness, she's in the school nurse's office with a headache, and I'm sitting with a headache patient. And she was 5 years old. And quite frankly, I had Ayurveda in my back pocket, and I didn't really want to prescribe medications for her, just like I didn't want to take medications for myself when I had my sleep issues. So, and I resolved, by the way, my sleep issues within a month of following the Ayurvedic routine back in medical school. Never took any medications, right? And I'm still medication free at 54 and sleeping well. So I said, okay, I knew this worked for me. I knew that I could improve myself. Let me teach some of these techniques to her. So I didn't understand enough about gut function. I had just explored it a little bit with the Ayurvedic reading I was doing. So I did some courses and realized, wow, there's this thing called the food intolerance. We talked about food allergies quite a bit. You know, the IgE, quick, fast reaction to like a peanut, and you break out in hives or have difficulty breathing. Sometimes you need an EpiPen or go to the emergency room. Understood that medically. Food intolerances, it's an IgG, it's an antibody response that takes 4 to 72 hours to develop. You can eat a food today and not have a reaction until 2 or 3 days from now. It's a
Mhm.
slow building immune response, right? So
Yeah.
it's hard to catch. You can miss it easily. So Ari was getting these headaches, and I said, let's just do this testing. Found out she had an intolerance to lot of foods, to gluten, to dairy, to eggs. Now, mind you, she was age 5, and we were going to a lot of birthday parties. And here in the US, they love to serve cake and pizza at birthday parties. So all she was eating during the weekends was these kind of foods. And during the week, I was giving her mozzarella cheese sticks and giving her sandwiches. So I completely changed her diet and realized, wow, within 2 months, her headaches went away. She was getting them every single week for months. Okay. That was my first other patient. Besides myself, I studied my daughter. And I said, okay, this is truly something. Let me then study my clinic. I studied 500 patients, and we found that 70% had a dairy
Mm-hmm.
intolerance, 35% had gluten or grain intolerance, and about 30% had egg intolerances. So I took my patients off of these foods, and their headaches started improving. I said, okay, so what is this connection? I studied it. I found it. After that, I actually studied adrenals. I was talking to you about the cortisol. I studied that and found that my patients, 95% of them had adrenal fatigue. They weren't making enough cortisol. So I have these two big things, these studies that I said, I need to understand what's going on. So start with the gut brain and realized as you look at ancient medicine literature very clearly, food is medicine, let medicine be thy food. I mean, we really in Eastern medicine respect eating food, not just food that has the right amount of protein and fats and carbohydrates. That's a very Western way of thinking. The Eastern is the state of the food. Are you getting 6 tastes into every meal? Sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, astringent, which is what Eastern food, when you look at why we have the chutneys and we have the spices and we have even you look at Asian food like kimchi, it's to give you that bitters and give you the astringents. That actually helps your digestive enzymes and that helps your
Mm-hmm.
microbiome. So what we realize is that 70% of your immune system is in your gut. Your gut literally makes all the neurotransmitters in your body. 90% of your serotonin is made in your gut. You create amino acids, you create proteins. You actually break down and assimilate the proteins you eat in your diet and then reassemble and you create vitamins and nutrients. And so your gut is a factory that is taking the carbohydrates and the proteins and the fats from your diet, mainly the main source of the microbiome is carbohydrates. So if someone's going ketogenic and avoiding carbohydrates, just so you know, the main fuel of your bacteria is carbohydrates. It takes all of the fuel and converts it and then assimilates it, creates these byproducts, then helping the rest of your body with that. So you don't realize the importance of not only are you maybe eating things you could be intolerant to and not breaking them down well, but also, do you actually include all these different tastes and spices in your food to help your microbiome digest? And then there's the enteric nervous system. That's the microbiome. The enteric, which I call the second brain. The third brain I call the microbiome. The first brain is the central nervous system, how we think. I use this 3-brain model. The enteric nervous system is how we feel. And how we feel can affect how we digest. How we think can affect how we digest, not just what we eat. So it's this top down, bottom up approach that I feel is really important to understand. So the gut plays a huge role, and it's influenced how we think and feel, influenced by how we think and feel.
Mm-hmm. That is
There's a lot.
surprising to you. Hmm. All right. And Trupti, this has been an insightful conversation so far, and it's time for us to add some more spice and some more excitement to the episode, which means it brings us to the second rapid fire round. If you're ready, let's get started.
Ready? I am ready.
Okay, comes the first word. If you could have one gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
Ooh, you have the power to transform your life. It's all within.
Mm-hmm. Super. Can you describe yourself in just one word?
Purposeful.
And one brain hack you swear by.
So many, but just one. I'm going to tell you 10 p.m. bedtime. 10 p.m. bedtime. If the world just went to bed at 10 p.m., we'd all be a lot happier.
And your stress mantra in just one line.
Stress mantra in one line. Reconnection with self, getting to know who you are allows you
Mm-hmm.
to be your most optimal, authentic you.
Yeah. And a book that changed your view of health.
Wow. I'm going to really give the credit to Deepak Chopra. His beautiful
Mm-hmm.
book, Restful Sleep. Restful Sleep. I
Mm-hmm.
read that 25 years ago.
Okay.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you could prescribe one universal habit to all humans, what would it be?
One universal habit to all humans.
Yeah.
I have two in my mind. I'm going to try to think of which one would I say first. I
Mm-hmm.
want to say
Yeah.
both of these. I want to say both of these. Okay. I'm going to say forgiveness.
Okay.
Forgiveness.
And
Forgive. Mhm.
okay. And here comes the last one for the second rapid fire. What is one electronic gadget or a fantasy gadget that you like to see or invent yourself?
The gadget would be a beautiful tool to let us understand our unique stress personality. It's in my book,
Mm.
The Stress RX. I talk about the windy, fire, earthy personality. Since of discussing it, the tool would actually tell you, you're a little fiery right now. You're a little
Mm.
windy right now. And the tool would actually gauge it, looking at your autonomic nervous system, looking at your hormones, looking at your labs, everything. I'm going to make it a big, amazing tool. And it can look and pull all that information together and tell you what state you're in. And even better, the tool would tell you what to do next and encourage you to either take action by changing your diet, changing your thought pattern, changing your breath pattern, something. It would be all in one tool. That'd be fantastic.
Wow. That's very creative and purposeful as well. And after that amazing second rapid fire, let's flip back to the mainstream. So, Trupti, for leaders and entrepreneurs, like who constantly are under pressure,
Mm.
right? How can they manage high performance without high stress?
It's interesting. If you just think of neurology, let's think about the three brains that kind of within the head. The prefrontal cortex, which allows us to be human. It gives us the executive functioning. It allows us to feel sensations of gratitude and compassion, allows us to think in a bigger way, be creative. The prefrontal cortex is often dominated by the limbic brain, which is the feeling brain, the temporal lobes, and the amygdala and the fear centers, which is then dominated by the reptilian brain, which is that survival aspect to our being. As a leader, as someone who wants nothing but the best outcomes for ourselves, our team, our business, if we can operate from the prefrontal cortex throughout the day, everything just happens without that intensity, without that sense of pressure, without that sense of need. It's a very unique way of operating. And when you operate in a space with the prefrontal being on and not being dominant and not being dominated by the amygdala and that reptilian brain, things just flow. I've opened so many businesses. I've done so many, I'm so grateful to have been on national TV. I've been the number one speaker for pharma companies. All these things have happened. And I worked hard. There's no question. I won an award in sixth grade as the hardest working kid in the class. I'm a hard worker, yet I'm very purposeful and I don't bring that intensity into my being. As much as I can, I try to operate from a space of if I'm working in purpose, things that are supposed to happen will come. The opportunities will show up. The right path will be taken. I will choose things that will align with that final outcome and goal. And that's where I am a certified yoga instructor, and I'll tell you, breath and yoga, you know,
Mm-hmm.
being in that space, who am I serving and what's my goal? And reading the Gita and understanding like it's a conflict is all in here. It's not out there. And the more I can resolve this internal battle that's going on and be present and be there for those. And the forgiveness I bring up, I was between forgiveness and compassion, by the way. Forgiveness I bring up because there's so many people that hold on to things. There's so much baggage and anger and resentment, and they bring that into their current being. It distracts from your purpose. And I encourage people, just clear it all. Clear it, get rid of it. I heard recently that one third of people are estranged from a family member. One third of people are estranged from a family member. And I'm not here to say every family member is worth spending time with. Yeah, what I'll say is that we're very quick to cancel, to get angry, to hold energy, and that, I'm telling you, is occupying really important space in your energy body, taking away from you being your optimal, most performing self. It's actually taking away from you and consuming that stress response. I mentioned that adrenal making cortisol. Yeah, if you're holding on to, we call it a neurological part, you're holding it in your subconscious mind, you're going to hold on to that and you're going to expend energy. You don't even realize the conscious level, you're wasting energy. So I digress here and go deep into this because I really believe that that's what it takes. And if you clear out the baggage, we call it ama in Ayurvedic medicine, the toxin, right? Physical and emotional toxin. Clear it out. You can be so present and not burdened by that amygdala, the brain that's holding on to resentment and anger and jealousy and all those things that are ugly. Clear that, be present, and be purposeful. And quite frankly, things just show up. They show up. And it's not that you're just lucky, it's because you worked at it. You know? People that have things happen in their lives, they aren't just lucky. It's because they've worked on themselves. They've done a lot of hard work on themselves, you know?
Right. Got it. And this has been extremely insightful conversation, and I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. And how is your experience being hosted on the Guiding Voice?
Loved it. Thank you. Really beautiful, beautiful conversation with you. And I love all of your work. And thank you for sharing and allowing me to share because I think there's so many out there that are struggling and looking for some answers. And I think it's about time we get to the root cause and bring in our ancient 5,000-year-old science into modern thinking. We can move a lot faster and more effectively if we do that.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, and looking forward to hosting you again in future. And I wish you all the best in everything that you do, Trupti. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Naveen. Such a pleasure.
All right. So, friends, that was our episode with Dr. Trupti Gokani. And before we jump into the fun trivia section, we have a quick request. In case if you have enjoyed the conversation and found it useful, request you to share with at least three of your friends or colleagues or family members who would also like TGV, the guiding voice, so spread the knowledge and help others grow just like you have been growing. And now it's time for us to cruise into the trivia segment. And having had amazing conversation with Dr. Trupti on stress and also understanding the root cause related to stress, I thought of presenting you few lesser known facts about the origins of stress. The first thing is the word stress, right, wasn't always psychological. The term stress actually comes from physics, where it originally described the force applied to an object that causes strain or deformation. And it was later adopted into psychology to describe the pressure experienced by humans under emotional or mental tension. Next fact is that the father of stress, who is Hans Selye, who lived between 1907 to 1982, and the modern concept of stress in medicine and psychology was introduced by him, who is an endocrinologist from Austria Hungary. And in 1936, he published a groundbreaking paper titled A Syndrome Produced by Diverse Noxious Agents, coining the term General Adaptation Syndrome, describing how the body reacts to challenges. Third fact is that Selye discovered stress accidentally. While experimenting on rats, Selye noticed that no matter what condition he exposed them to, like cold, heat, hunger, or fear, their bodies reacted the same way with adrenal enlargement and also immune suppression. And this led him to realize the body has a universal stress response. So these are the three things which I wanted to share as part of trivia. Likewise, if you are aware of any interesting facts related to stress, or if you would like to share the stress coping mechanism that you're following, do let us know. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, you can comment there. Or if you found it on audio platforms like Spotify, you can comment there as well. Or you can reach out to us on social media as well. So, folks, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and also for being part of our awesome TGV family. So until next time, take care, stay inspired, and remember, the best is yet to come. Goodbye for now. See you on the next episode with another amazing guest. Take care. Love you all. Bye bye.